Welcome to our today lecture. We have got a real unique guest for today, Professor Karel Luyben, President of the EOSC Association, and a person with such a track record that I would not dare to go along. I only just mention very few facts from his CV. In 1993, he became full professor for biochemical engineering at the Delft University of Technology, where he has spent actually most of his whole career. And he has completed his career with that university, becoming for 9 years the rector magnificus of that university, currently holding a honorable position of rector magnificus emeritus of the Delft University of Technology. But just to go through the list, I would mention his positions as president of the European Federation for Biotechnology. He, for a long time, Karel used to be the chairperson of the Dutch Open Science National Committee, and also he belonged to the group of people who promoted the concept and solutions of open science Europe-wide, acting at the level of European Commission for various bodies there. We have met quite a while ago in one of those bodies, namely in EOSC. It's the expert group on open science of the European University Association. And now he has been in charge as an executive committee chair of EOSC at the founding stage. Now he is promoting the second or next stage of the development of EOSC initiative, going towards EOSC Federation. Well, I think it's enough, but this would give you an idea of the enthusiastic attitude of Karel in all of his involvements. And now, I bet it's the largest role of him with the EOSC development and the scale of its potential impact on the whole future research area, and actually also the societal impact of data, scientific research infrastructures on the whole European developments. Karel, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Marek. You said you would keep it brief, but you almost told everything about me you can think of. But anyway, thank you for that kind invitation, introduction, sorry, and thank you once again for the kind invitation to be here in Poland. I was able to give a lecture yesterday to the General Assembly of Rectors, which was a beautiful occasion to, let's say, express the developments which are taking place, which I will also try and express today about the European Open Science Cloud. And as I said yesterday, we prefer to use the abbreviation EOSC because it is not a cloud. And it is ultimately not only for science, it's broader than that. And it's not only about open science, it's about science in the broad sense, or research in the broad sense. But we were not allowed to change the name in 2019 when I became the chair of this expert group you mentioned. I proposed this in the first meeting and it didn't work. So we're living with the title EOSC, and the abbreviation over time will probably be clear in itself. Let me start by defining open science, as I did yesterday. For me, and this is a definition that was accepted in the Netherlands when I was the Dutch, let's say, person for open science. How was it called? It was well, I forgot the beautiful title they had. But anyway, I was asked to let's say be in charge of open science by the ministry. Three developments are important, and we had an interesting discussion yesterday whether under open access automatically open peer review is taking place. It is linked to, but it's not necessarily under. So you could also have a fourth line, but there's also many other things. Towards open access, there's a lot of that has been done already. And what I will emphasize today is towards fair data. This is the development we are trying to stimulate with EOSC. And the third development is embedding citizen science in this whole development. And you could sort of see this as moving from science as it is, or as it was, because this movement has taken place to quite some extent already, but there's decades to go, in my view, to science as it will be in the future. And there is not open science as it is, and there is not open science as it will be. It's just science, and it's a cultural shift, which takes a lot of time. For that, the recognition and reward system needs to change. That in itself is a cultural change in research performing organizations. There's too much emphasis on only number of publications and citations, and there's more than that. I'm not saying that that is irrelevant, I'm just saying it is not only publications and citations to those publications. Then in order to have this development, and especially in the domain of data, well prepared, well going, you need support. People need to be trained, and I tend to say you need one data steward per 20 active researchers. So I tell research leaders in universities very often, why don't you hire a data steward as number 21 instead of your 21st PhD student? Then they say, well, we don't have money for that. And then I say, well, it's a matter of choice. In the beginning, you may not have money, and therefore stimulating this development and this transition, because I call it transition, with money helps. But in the end, it is the money that is available for research or for science for which we have to do the job. And then I make the reference to, in the past, 40 years ago, people started to write in their project proposals that they need computers. They need money for computers in order to do their work. Do you still write a line in your project proposal that you need money for computers? No. You all use laptops as a normal way of life. This has changed, and you're not going back to the time where you did writing by hand instead of by computer. And the same will happen with processing the data. In, let's say, 10, 20 years' time, we will spend a little bit more, I guess so, from between 3%, we move to 5% on data processing and everything that is needed. And yes, that transition in the beginning is hard. Then we need the involvement of the community, a wider community, especially if we want to embed citizen science, but for now, the community of stakeholders. And we count that we have around 2,000 stakeholders in Europe. Universities, research performing organizations, service providing organizations, funders, and you name it. This is a rough guess, but that's about the number we think is there in Europe. Infrastructures are needed in order to build what I will explain in a minute, the federation. This is a federation of infrastructures, of a system of systems, as we call it, and thus infrastructures are essential for that. But in many cases, by the way, these infrastructures already exist. It's a matter of connecting them, it's a matter of using them. Not always and not everywhere. And then last but not least, policies and regulations. I tend to call that the last item as a boundary condition for this development, because I think policies and regulations should sort of follow reality rather than only drive reality. But of course, life is always a combination, in this case, of top-down and bottom-up. Well, in order for this transition to happen, for this cultural change to happen, engagement, coordination and support is needed, and the EOSC Association is one of the parties offering that. Important is also to realize the difference between open data and what I call fair data. Open data is data that you can find on the internet, you can download it, you can use it, you can reuse it, you can shape it, but not necessarily it has all the metadata that are needed in order to understand it. Fair data, on the other hand, are data that are findable, also on the internet usually, accessible for those that have access, and interoperable with other data sets because certain standards are met, and reusable for those that can use them for other purposes. This set of 15 principles underlying these four major principles of F, A, I and R is developed in 2014 in a workshop in the Lawrence Center in Leiden. Then in 2016, a Nature paper came out describing these 15 principles, and by now the G7, the G20, the European Commission, Canada, Australia, United States have accepted this as the set of principles underlying the development of data. So making your data as fair as possible is important. As fair as possible is not something you can strictly define. It depends on how far certain domains are with their standards. So I haven't seen data that are 0% fair, and I haven't seen data that are 100% fair. It's always somewhere in between. There are about 23 or so indicators for how fair data are. They all give a different answer. So that indicates we are on the way of making this set of, let's say, principles work, and there's still a long way to go. Of course, if your research is being paid publicly by public funded money, you want to make the data open as much as possible. Not all data can be open, not for, let's say, security reasons or for personal reasons. Some data need to be only restricted in use. So I tend to say as fair as possible, that's the first step, and then as open as possible, but with that as restricted as necessary in case of data that are personal data or data for security reasons cannot be all open. Defining EOSC is what I will do in a minute. EOSC, in our view, is the extra support we can offer for research being done in Europe. But some people say for the European research as well. We have a lot of researchers working here that are not European, they come from outside. So it's for research work being done in European organizations, research done in Europe. And that EOSC federation is going to be built as a federative structure. And this federation will be let's say built on nodes, and I'll show you an example of a node that has been created as the first one. These EOSC nodes together then form the federation, and they are part of what we call a web of fair data and services, which I will explain in the next slide. We all know computers, we know that they can form networks, and if you link all these networks together, which we often do, we have what you could call the internet we are familiar with. And on this internet, over a period of about 30 years, a little bit more, people have created a lot of pages, web pages, and that we call the World Wide Web. With this, you can do a lot, of course. You can buy things, you can rent things, you can learn things. There's a lot of things you can do with the World Wide Web. And thus, the same system will, of course, be used if you make your data fair. They have to be findable, and thus the internet will be used, of course, in order to have this web of fair data. So we tend to talk about the World Wide Web for the pages and the web of fair data emerging on the same internet. So now it's the European Open Science Cloud, because this is a worldwide development. The European Open Science Cloud is part of that. It is the European part where European money, for example for Euro HPC, high performance computing, or for research infrastructures, or money from countries, is additionally used for the European researchers to make their data available for others, to make transition across borders, across disciplines possible. But it's not only happening in Europe. There is not only the European Open Science Cloud, there's also something you could call the Canadian, Australian, African, American Open Science Cloud in the whole alphabet if you want. They don't use that name. As I already said, it's not the right name anyway. But these type of developments, very similar, are taking place in many places. South America, for example, has a hard time because they're all different countries. They don't have a union like we have the European Union. Nevertheless, these countries work together as much as possible to get a development similar to this going on in South America. And we have discussions in informal way for the time being between these regions in the world where these developments are taking place, with the United States, with Canada, with Australia, with South America, with Asia, also with China in the beginning. Russia has not been on the table so far, but yeah, we try to stimulate this development in the different regions of the world in a similar way.
A Chinese contribution to EOSC?
No, it's not possible. You have to be a member of the European Union or of the associated countries in order to become in the federation. Okay, if we define the federation, then this is going to function, as I said, as a network of interconnected, interoperable system, a system of systems called nodes. And these nodes can represent scientific communities that have a node, or regional communities, or national communities, or research institution, infrastructure, sorry. So something like this. We guess at this moment, that's my guess, but it's very hard to guess, that over a period of, let's say, 10 years, we will have 200 nodes, 100 to 200 nodes linked to each other. We will start with 7 to 10, as I will mention in a minute. So the EOSC Federation will offer a unified platform with one way of access for the European researchers, not through one website. You can come in through all the nodes, but one AAI system for reusing fair data that can be digital objects in general, so it doesn't have to be classical data in the classical sense, can also be publications, can also be software, can also be, let's say, protocols for your research work. And this will, of course, foster collaboration, increase productivity, and ultimately drives, hopefully, scientific excellence. How do we do this? Well, there is a co-programmed partnership for EOSC, which was set up by the European Commission in the framework of Horizon Europe. And it is based on an MOU signed on the one hand by us as the association, and on the other hand by the European Commission on behalf of DG RTD and DG Connect, two of the commissions inside the European Commission. And then we have a meeting twice a year with the partnership board where we discuss the overarching developments. Countries were not, in some cases, some countries were, but in other cases allowed to become a member of the association, not because of the association, but of the regulation in those countries. So the ministries could not be part of that. Therefore, what is called EOSC steering board, an expert group of the Commission, was set up. So this expert group talks to the Commission and talks to us regularly. We invite them per definition in the partnership board to keep them informed and to keep them involved. And there is, of course, direct interaction with people of the steering board frequently. The whole development is based on what we call the SRIA, Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. And part of the SRIA is the multi-annual roadmap, which is set up for let's say, several years in rolling system with Horizon Europe. So we had the phase 1 for 21-22, phase 2 23-24, and then last year we delivered 25-27. But because of the new commission, they decided to have 25 separately, and now we just updated 26-27, our multi-annual roadmap, which this morning got the approval of the General Assembly. So I can tell you that this is the roadmap we will propose to the Commission, and then hopefully get approval in the Partnership Board meeting in December. We are looking forward to update this SRIA. So we have SRIA 1.3, which includes this multi-annual roadmap of 26-27. But the SRIA has been now 4 years old. A lot of things has happened. And so we have laid out a new SRIA 2.0 set of chapters and consulted on that earlier this year. We actually wanted to start writing this year, but we were too busy with many other things. So the writing process for SRIA 2.0 will be starting next year. On top of that, part of it is the governance, and the governance is not decided yet, so we could not have written that chapter. But you can see that especially AI will be a separate chapter, which was not in the previous SRIA, and we really think AI can be important for FAIR, and FAIR can be important for AI if you have the right set of data. We sometimes call FAIR as full AI ready. It's another way of looking at the abbreviation of FAIR, full AI ready. How does the process work? As I said, based on an MOU between the RTD, DG Connect and our association, we bring out a multi-annual roadmap, which I just described, and we do that by consulting the whole community, not only our members, a much broader community. Then this is given to the Commission that uses this in the negotiation process with the countries, the member states and the associated countries as part of the Horizon Europe work program. And out of that comes then a part of the Horizon Europe work program, part of the research infrastructures to be more exact, on Infra EOSC in this case. And in total they have promised to deliver for 490 million euro of projects in a period of 7 years. So far they have delivered every year roughly 70 million, so they are in line with that. We, on the other hand, as an association, have to deliver for minimally 500 million in-kind contribution to the same SRIA. And by now we have done 1.3 billion, to be honest. So we have overreached easily the 500 million. This leads to the EOSC program, and we have written together with the Commission a vademecum, or we have written it, the Commission has accepted it, in order to get these projects to work together. Horizon Europe projects and also Horizon 2020 projects have as a characteristic that they are individual projects and they report to the Commission and they are independent. Not necessarily they work together in a joint effort to build EOSC. You're not going to build EOSC with projects anyway. But anyway, a lot of these projects now do work together and it helps enormously. We have created what is called the Winter School based on the request of the projects themselves. We will have our second winter school in Spain in January of 2025 in order for these projects to get closer together and to have a whole week of discussion jointly. As I said, the last step we have done is creating the MAR 2627, which was this morning accepted by the association. This is a picture from the European Commission. I've taken several slides from the European Commission. You can see them by the yellow line as indicated. And these slides indicate what was presented earlier this year as how they see the federation. This is a federation of nodes. As you can see, not all the nodes necessarily have to link to what is the EOSC EU node, which I will describe in more detail, because this is the only node that exists. We don't have a federation. We are building a federation. Hopefully next year, by the middle or the end of next year, we will have a federation. But one node is not a federation, of course. So only the EOSC EU node is existing and was launched during our symposium on the 22nd of October. So you could distinguish between national nodes, thematic nodes in a certain thematic domain or in a certain set of disciplines, and other types of, let's say, infrastructural nodes. So the EOSC Federation is, as it says, supposed to be a composition of those nodes together. You need for that policies and standards. You need, of course, access systems which are the same. Now, if we look at the building of the federation, and I will explain the EOSC EU node where we are in a minute, this is done under the, let's say, governance of what we call the tripartite. And the tripartite is defined as the combination of the association with the Commission plus the steering board coming from the country. So steering board, expert group, Commission, association, these are the three parties. They form the tripartite. They meet twice a year for half a day, and with that, again, you cannot build a federation. So what we have done is we have formed a tripartite group, which has representatives of these three bodies. On top of that is 40 countries, so it's also not easy to do the discussion. And this tripartite group meets every 2 to 3 weeks for 2 hours, and with that, a lot of work is done by us as an association, but with the support of the tripartite group in the discussions we have. And we can also invite experts to these meetings, which we've done twice. Then we have sent out a questionnaire in the middle of last year asking organizations broadly, not our membership. You don't have to be a member of the association to become a EOSC node or to be part of the federation. So everybody that thinks they could contribute to the startup phase could answer this questionnaire. Has not reached everybody, but we got 121 submissions on the questionnaire from 25 countries and 15 international organizations in Europe. Of course, they have to come from the European Union or the associated countries, otherwise it doesn't fit. Out of those 121, 52 said we would like to build an EOSC node now or in the near future. And we could distinguish, but that's our interpretation, 5 types of nodes: thematic ones, national ones, institutional ones, regional ones, and some others, like the EOSC EU node itself or some of the infrastructure nodes. Now we have done the selection out of those 52 of 29 what we call potential candidate nodes. They can become candidate nodes, but we can only accommodate 7 to 10 candidate nodes in the first wave because of the capacity of the contractors of the EOSC EU node. So we have to go wave by wave. And one of the questions we will ask in the dialogues we are now starting with these 29 let's say parties that have shown their interest and that were selected is, will you be able to help other organizations to onboard resources on your node or to help other organizations to enroll a EOSC node in the future, so that we will expand the capacity of expanding the federation. Because if we would roll this out 7 to 10 per year, it will take forever, well, not forever, but a long time to get going. So we are now in the middle of the process. We start the dialogue the 5th of December, and then I think the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th of December we will have dialogues with groups to discuss with these 29 what is their status, how do they view. We expect that quite a number will drop out, because when they see what is involved, what expertise, how much manpower, how much effort is involved, several of them will probably say, well, we'll join you in the second wave instead of in the first wave. But that's okay, because we can only accommodate 7 to 10. If we look at the 121 answers, as I said, 52 answered they wanted to form a node. Out of the 121, 51, some of them in the group of 52, but this is not part of the 52, this is part of the 121. 51 said we want to have in our node as well repositories, we can offer as well repositories as services on these repositories, and by repositories we mean data repositories. 74 said we can only offer services, 10 said we can only offer repositories, and 12 not specified. They probably put a placeholder to be in the discussion. But it's interesting to see the difference between the ones offering repositories and the ones offering services, because the system was geared towards services much more up until now with the EOSC portal as it was geared towards repositories. And that is the direction we have to go, of course. The aim of all of this is to be able to share data coming from repositories. If we categorize them, that is our interpretation. This is not what the people themselves said, because we didn't use these words like thematic or national, but then we see in the 121 something like 22 thematic proposals, 18 national proposals, sorry, not in the 121, in the 52, 6 institutional, 4 others, among them the EOSC EU node, and 2 regional ones. And then we asked them, what do you see as the added value to join this build-up phase? Why would you do that? Why would you take the effort? Of course, we can dream up what we think is the added value, but more important is, why would they do it? What do they see? Well, they see increased visibility and reach as an important added value for them, and that's indeed the intention, that the visibility of what they offer becomes larger. Collaboration and interoperability, again, this is also the intention of the Federation. Then an interesting one is support for open science and fair principles. Many countries have asked their organizations to support open science and to go towards the fair principles, and they see this as an opportunity to stimulate this development. Then, of course, access to a broader resource and expertise, same intention, but then not only being visible, but also being able to use the expertise and resources of others. Influence the policy and standardization. Indirectly, of course, but jointly setting standards, if we are part of that federation, is definitely influencing the policies. And the last one is an interesting one, sustainability and economic benefits, because we didn't promise any sustainability, we didn't promise any economical benefits, but I'm pretty sure if, let's say, all the research infrastructures in Europe would cluster together and become part of the federation, they become, let's say, much more resilient to possible cuts in the future. If all these data are there, no government is going to cut that so easy as they would do now with one of the research infrastructures. As I said, we will look a little bit more closely into the EOSC EU node. The European Commission, DG Connect to be more specific, had a procurement for contractors end of last year or middle of last year until the beginning of this year, in order for these contractors to create what is now called the EOSC EU node. So we call this a seed in the ground, the first node, which has a lot of, let's say, systems that can be offered to other nodes in the future. And if you look at the architecture, it looks something like this. The EOSC EU node, in connection with other EOSC nodes in the future, has a European level, has a national level for the different stages, and has the institutional level. And then on the right-hand side, there is the architecture for this EOSC EU node, and indicated, and this was a special wish from DG Connect, the possible connection with Euro HPC. There is no connection at the moment, but of course several of the Euro HPC facilities could become nodes as well. And yes, it would be great if Euro HPC would join forces with the Federation, as with the common European data spaces. Again, there are no common European data spaces at the moment. They are thought of, they are talked about, they are discussed, and we have the most interaction with the development of the European health data space so far, which, by the way, is a completely different structure. We are also a data space with the Federation. We are the data space for research and innovation. And this is supposed to be a data space underlying all the others in connection with all the other data spaces, if they are there. But the European Health Data Space is a legalistic system coming from the European Commission, where the countries agree on certain rules with respect to health data and then legally enforce this in the country. Now, they have not discussed even the infrastructure they are going to use for that, and they have to start doing that very quickly, because in a number of years from now, the law will take into, the act will take action, and then the countries have to comply with that. If we look at the EOSC node, then this is a European level multidisciplinary, multinational activity with a portfolio based on, let's say, portfolio accessible for all those that have access to EduGain and the EU login. So they have combined EduGain as a login system, as an AAI system, with the login system EIDAS from the European login. It is owned by the European Commission. It says this is a slide from the Commission, for now owned by the Commission. I think forever owned by the Commission, otherwise it will not be an EOSC node. But of course they will outsource the operation of it. They have outsourced the operation of creating it, and they will probably outsource the operation of running it. But it's governed as part of the tripartite. It's interesting, when we set out the questionnaire, the second answer that came in was from the EOSC node. Peter Zegedy from DG Connect filled in the questionnaire. He said, we are just another node. Well, they're not really just another node, they're a special one, but they're not so special that they are the central node or that they are controlling the system. It's not so that every node has to be connected to the EOSC node. There could be nodes in the system that are connected to other nodes, but not necessarily to the EOSC node. Well, of course, it has to be operated 24/7. That's an interesting rule we would like to apply for the whole federation, but that's a difficult one because some of the research organizations are not used to that. So we may, for certain research infrastructures, let's say, accept that it's not 24/7, but a certain, let's say, limited amount of time in the day, but we will strive to access 24/7 as much as possible. Then the European Commission has also procured another contract on what is called Simple. This is software to link the data spaces together. I do not, or I only know that the intention is that this Simple software will do that. I have not seen the software, and it's not there. It's being created. The procurement is running, or the contractors are working. So it's difficult to say what it exactly will do for the interoperation, the interoperability between those data spaces. But the intention is that also EOSC will be, of course, part of the linkages with the Simple software. Then, as the Commission says, Euro HPC resources may be offered through the Federation, as I mentioned before, and of course it's an open concept, so national, regional and thematic services and providers can onboard. So we have two terms. We use the word onboarding of services onto an existing node. There's only one node at the moment, and they have not started onboarding any services yet, but they have said we are interested, and they is the contractors for the EOSC node, to learn for those organizations that would like to onboard their services on our EOSC node in the future. And we are also in the process of selecting potential candidate nodes and candidate nodes later on, asking them, is it possible for other organizations to onboard their resources, let's say services or repositories, onto your node? Let me give you an example. In the Netherlands, SURF is the NREN, has offered to create a node. They are still in the list of 29. Whether they make the 7 to 10, we will see. But suppose they are, then they become an EOSC node. Then several organizations in our country, University of Utrecht, the Go Fair Foundation and several others had already said, we would like to offer resources to the SURF EOSC node if it would be there. So this is the way to onboard. And then the other thing is to enroll a new node. So the federation is consisting of nodes. If you bring in a new node, we use the word enrolling of a whole new node or onboarding resources on an existing node. Well, the EOSC node has some unique features. for new users. The AAI system, which I already mentioned, based on a combination of EduGain and EIDAS, and the policy-based, let's say, access policies, which we have written as an association, and that has been taken over by the tripartite. And it works with an interesting system, I think, and this was already suggested in 2019 by the executive board, of virtual credits. So they offer to researchers that are part of faculty members of this university, for example, will get 500 credits to start playing around with the EOSC EU Note. And this is the way for them to learn how much of the resources are being used, how can you, let's say, structure that. After 3 months, your credits get upgraded again to 500. If you haven't spent anything, it stays 500. If you spent all of it, you get another 500 as a faculty member. And if you're linked to one of the organizations that has access to the Federation and you're not a faculty member, you get 100 credits. If you are in the EOSC EU Note, and it's interesting to try, and on the slides there was the link, you can also type in EOSC EU Note, and then you get easily access to the EOSC EU Note. If you're in there, you can also create a group, and a group gets 1,000 credits. A group of researchers can then work together with these 1,000 credits. There's not a whole lot you can do with these credits for the time being. There's only 6 services, and the credits run out if you use the power quickly, also very quickly, but it is there to give you access and to show what it is and what can be done. Then the discoverability, onboarding, and the native system is being created with this EOSC EU Note. There's an integrated user space, as I just mentioned, for making workflows possible with groups. And yes, there is a monitoring and help desk system. The intention is that the monitoring will run over the whole of the Federation, that the help desk will also be available for all of the nodes. So these are also requirements for future nodes to be taken into account. And then there's a list of organizations that's behind it. If you go to the EOSC EU Note, one of the things you will find without logging in, everybody can go there, is a search engine. And the search engine now is using the OpenAir knowledge graph and a lot of other sources to find things. It's not working properly yet. Plug in your name, which I did. Then I get 80,000 publications. I don't have 80,000 publications. So it's not operating yet, and they admitted that they're working on it. But it is just being launched. It is understandable. This is not the Federation. This is not the resources. It's important to realize that. This is material that came from the EOS portal, and it was converted to this system, and you don't need any credits, and you don't need access to the Federation for that. That is just a search engine. Valuable to find things, but not something you can really work with. You have to get really into the system itself, sign in order to use the credits and to use the services available. So what does it offer? For researchers, it offers the discover possibility, which I just mentioned, and it says tens of millions, 127 million resources are in there, not resources, items are in there. Then you can find services and tools. There's about 6 of them, as I mentioned at the moment. And you can use the integrated tools for compute and creating virtual machines if you want to. For the contributors, they benefit from the federated AAI. So this federated AAI is also offered to the other nodes that are coming on board. And in the first wave, we will most likely connect all these new EOSC nodes to the EOSC EU node. Not necessarily in the future, but in the beginning, definitely, because there is where the only thing is and where the knowledge is at the moment. Let's see, then the authorization process is important for the contributors. The virtual credit system is for the others to be taken over and offered by the EOSC EU node. And of course the harvesting from the curated catalogs is with respect to the knowledge graph coming again from the EOSC EU node at the moment. So if we look at the connections in the Federation, and on the upper right you see a picture again of what the nodes connection is. It is a puzzle, to be honest, and to bring this all together. All these organizations are different in Europe. All these organizations have different backgrounds and different possibilities. So it will be slowly solving a puzzle by having the same use policies, to having the same access policies, to having the same rules of participation. We have already written some of those, but in the near future, with writing the handbook, which I will explain in a minute, we will do step by step further, let's say, improvement of the sort of unification. It's not a top-down. We want to offer as much freedom to all the EOSC nodes as possible, but there are limitations. You have to have the same AAI system, for example. So there's minimum standards that need to be applied in order to get interoperability going. There's common policies and rules of participation we have to live with, and there's a model to govern. We have indicated today in the General Assembly this morning again that the EOSC Association is offering itself as an organization to be the managerial organization for the Federation. This is not a given thing, it's not decided, it's to be decided by the tripartite, but we have offered to the tripartite that the EOSC Association will do that. If not, then they have to come up with another organization that does that, and that has to be either an existing organization, not so easy because there's not that many overarching organizations, or they have to create a new one. But I don't think that's likely to happen. And then there is a trade-off, of course, between inclusiveness and the quality of resources. So we're looking for quality, but we also want to include as much as possible all the parties. This is the group of contractors that did the work and are still doing the work for the coming 2 years. So the upper group is the group led by PSNC, which is nice to mention here, for the exchange services. And the lower group is the core services that were implemented. But the whole group of contractors is, of course, working together. I'm not going to explain this in detail, but here you see the, let's say, available artifacts. In green, the ones that are available, in gray, the ones that are being in progress, and in red, that are not applicable, available yet. For on the top end, the Federation, and on the lower end, the EOSC EU node. And you see the EOSC EU node, there's still a lot of red, but there are some of the things green already, and that is material and information that is available you can access. And for example, on the top part, you will find the EOSC ROP, rules of participation, which we are working on, coming from the working group, the document, acceptable use policies, which we have written, also available on the website, etc. So this set of material will be created further for as well the policy, the architecture, as the operations and the governance. And part of it will be the handbook. The aim of all of this is to build up the Federation in steps, and the first wave will happen in 2025. The user of the Federation will then hopefully at the end of that year be able to sign on with a single sign-on for the system, find a common EOSC catalog of resources that is available through all the nodes that are there at the moment, let's say 10, can create an EOSC virtual research environment in the system, has access to a certain amount of high value, hopefully fair and machine actionable data. Machine actionability is something I would like to stress again. Machine actionability is not very often the case, but it becomes more and more important. If you have huge data sets, you'd rather not send terabytes over the internet, or if you want to have your resources coming from 1,000 or a couple of thousand of data sets across the world, then also you're not going to collect them all by hand. So visiting data will be a more common system in the future than only sending data. And we will offer, of course, to the users an engagement policy in order to discuss with them the value and the propositions of the Federation. The Federation itself will consist of several enrolled nodes, as we see it at the moment. It will have to have a governance by that time, so we have to take a decision next year on who will actually be the organizational structure. The governance will be the tripartite governance, that's a given thing. Have a detailed application process, again that will be the handbook, and have established federation-wide policies and interoperability framework. There was a draft in the past, this has to be updated. EOSC Future has created quite a bit of material on interoperability, and we have to work on that further. And then it has to have demonstrated that cross-node federating capabilities are possible. And last but not least, the rest of the community and the stakeholders interested to contribute in the future, they will see that there will be detailed practical information on how to do this. They will get guidance on the procedures coming from the handbook, a demonstration of use cases, most likely by that time, and the opportunity to be consulted at the different stages. We want to have a special role for the EOSC notes in an EOSC notes forum. These are the targets we set ourselves for the end of next year. So if you want to know about the future, we hope that we can fulfill these targets and then comply with them by the end of next year. I'm going to skip this, but there is a process going on of identifying the potential candidate notes. We've done that, but from these potential candidate notes, these 29, based on interest, maturity and diversity, but also inclusiveness and, let's say, a representation from different countries, from different organizations, we are going to do the selection and the reduction from 29 to 7 to 10 candidate notes. A few words about the EOSC Federation handbook we are writing. This is a voluntary process done by the association on behalf of the tripartite again. So this is work done for the tripartite. Most of the projects don't show the how-to on the federation, of course. The federation and the notes concept emerged in 23 and were not well defined. They are still not clearly defined enough. That needs to be done in the handbook. And the goal to build up a first, let's say, iteration of the federation of 25 is rather ambitious, and we really hope we can do that. But a clear manual will help. We've had a call for people to join us in writing. So we have 22 writers, 10 reviewers and 5 editors, all volunteers that do a lot of work in writing this handbook. Then it is looked at by the tripartite group and by the tripartite governance to ultimately agree on the text. And then we did an open consultation just now where we got the answers in. And again, I would like to thank the reviewers and the volunteers here. 3 chapters have been written: the purpose chapter, the governance chapter and the operations chapter, and 3 chapters, the layout has been given: architecture, scientific resources and policies. And this first version, we have to keep in mind, is for 25, 26, 20, up until 27. It's not having the ultimate governance in it, it's not having the future of the federation in it, it's having the system now in it. So it will build the federation during this period, not looking only at how it will be, or not looking at all how it will be in the future. That are other documents. So so what will the federation enable in this period for the researchers, and how will we measure success, which is an important factor as well. Well, we conclude that the handbook is being written by a group of enthusiastic people without using artificial intelligence, by the way. The feedback provided so far clearly shows that we have to update chapter 3. There's a lot of work there to be done, and the majority agrees that this handbook is a useful tool, of course, to be updated every year. And our goal is to have the 6 chapters ready by the end of this year. The timeline: questionnaire was in August. In October, we did the consultation with the Federation Handbook that has just been passed. In November, we had our first tripartite group meeting again, well, our 9th meeting actually, where we discussed this movement from potential candidate notes to candidate notes and the assessment. This was in Budapest. And then the potential candidate notes now are just invited this week. I saw the emails going out for a dialogue starting in the beginning of December. And then the first 3 quarters of next year will be spent on building it. I come to Q&A. Then thank you for the attention, especially the people that are here in the room, but also for the attention online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karel. And I think we are here in a small group, but perhaps you also would have some interventions, questions addressed to Karel already.
Any questions from the audience here to start off with? Yes.
I'm being the infrastructure guy. Obviously have a question about the necessity of edugain. This is obviously an access mechanism. Is it, and from your presentation I understood that it's kind of a very basic requirement for every research and educational institution to be part of EduGain. Is it correct?
Yes and no. If you are part of EduGain or have an EU login. So if you're not part of EduGain, you can create your own EU login in the EOSC system. And those two are combined to what is now the AAI for EOSC, and most likely, that is under discussion, will also be the AAI for Euro HPC. So the intention is to have the similar AAI system for EOSC and for Euro HPC.
Okay, the one of the reasons for my question is that depending on the country, EduGain is possibly the only mechanism that can tie a physical person to a research or educational institution. Most ADAS solutions just confirm the identity, not necessarily in the context of connection to research.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, I'm not a specialist on EduGain, to be honest, but at least in our country, the system distinguishes whether you are a faculty member or not a faculty member. The faculty members get 500 credits and the non-faculty members get 100 credits to see the system. So, yeah, there is difference. Is the same in your country here?
There are two parts. One is about EduGain. EduGain requires the system to know actually the participating nodes to provide attribute staff or student. That's requirement.
Staff or student, not distinguish the staff between, let's say, faculty members and non-faculty members.
This may be included in the response from EduGain.
Yeah.
However, it is not a requirement.
That's
so
correct,
if the full answer will be in the language of EduGain, there are identity providers and service providers. So the service provider may have some extra requirements, except in addition to the basic required attributes that must be provided.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
But this is for the EduGain. For the ADAS part, depending on the country, the ADAS system may not know the connection of individual to the institution.
Yeah.
So that was the reason for my comment that only the EduGain actually provides this vital information.
Yeah, how they will solve this, I'm not sure. It could be that by that time for your EU login, you also have to provide that information. I don't know. I'm not a specialist on AAI.
Okay, but the conclusion is that every research and educational institution must be part. Should be part, should have incentive to be part of EduGain.
Yes.
Okay, before I ask other people, I have some provocative questions.
Go ahead.
You have started from mentioning as one of your objectives incorporation of citizen society.
For the open science development, not necessarily for EOSC.
Yeah, but this is actually the issue that is also of relevance in another context, namely your idea. It is so that not the whole world consists of academic communities. You still have also some industries and businesses. And to make this whole future concept viable, you certainly have already thought of the ways of how to set up the cohabitation with those sectors. Could you comment?
Yeah. Well, I first would like to iterate once more that the web of fair data is available for everybody. Yeah. It has nothing to do with the EOSC Federation. So the EOSC Federation is offering extras to European researchers with the money coming from the countries and coming from Europe. And it's not self-evident that this extra, for example, a virtual machine, storage capacity or compute, is available for all the industries as well. But those who make their data fair can make them accessible also for industry. They can be found on the internet. Industry or private persons can also find these data. And if they give access to everybody, if it's open data, for example, then they can use it. They do not necessarily have to go to the federation or be part of the federation. That having said, we also think of possible future, let's say, contributions coming from companies or coming from other organizations. But they have to comply with the rules that are set by the public organizations that are building it.
And to just continue, there is also another type of challenge. You actually commented on it to some extent already. Namely, you have in between quite a number of well-established European large-scale infrastructures and their organizations. And of course, you can claim that accepting a fair concept, it will be the way of for onboarding them into EOSC structures. But what is your vision on how to get a real smooth transition path with organizations that we have actually talked about yesterday, like Open Air?
Now, how smooth it will be, I cannot predict in the future, but I can tell you that the first dialogue is with 5 research infrastructures already on the 5th of December. And then there's another 7, sorry. And then there's another 5 in the 4th dialogue meeting that are all coming from the health sciences. So yes, there are quite a number of research infrastructures operating in Europe. They have nodes, they have systems similar, they have possibilities, and these are basically the first ones we will discuss with and how to get them in. How smooth the process will be, I cannot predict. I hope as smooth as possible.
Well, as one of the fair principles. But so thank you very much for these answers. No.
Is your microphone still on? Well, I'm not sure. You have to.
This microphone, well, gets off eagerly. I understand that. I think it would be also of some use to our online audience to make a more explicit, really some short summarizing comment on the onboarding pathways for those who will not become directly parts of Federation, but would like to get a real interoperability and
Well, onboarding means onboarding of resources, and we use the word resources for repositories of data and services on those data. Onboarding means offering these resources to one of the existing EOSC nodes. There are no EOSC nodes except for the EOSC node, and that does not onboard yet. But in the next year this will change. So EOSC node as the first node will offer the possibility to onboard for certain organizations. It's up to them to decide whether they accept them, their resources onto the EOSC node. They have already onboarded the knowledge graph of OpenAir. They have also already onboarded several other things from OpenAir, as an example, because you mentioned OpenAir. But it's of course depending on the organization whether they want to offer their resources through the EOSC node or through another EOSC node if they are there in the near future. And therefore, we think it's also important that the transportability of your resources is possible. Suppose you would decide to offer your resources through the EOSC node, and later on come to the conclusion, you live in Poland, you are an organization here, that there is a Polish node which fits better, or there is a thematic node which fits better. Then you must be able to switch from one node to another node with your resources. In our country, several organizations have already expressed to SURF their interest of using SURF as the host for their resources. That means SURF has to make SLAs with those organizations for those resources and has to make clear who has the responsibility for those resources with respect to helping information, with respect to maintaining it, with respect to complying with the rules. In the end, if SURF would be the service provider for those organizations, the contract SURF will have with the Federation makes SURF responsible for seeing to it that the resources are meeting the requirements. So those organizations that form an EOSC node will take on board the requirement that they are responsible for the requirements for the resources.
So, in a sense, you decentralize delegate the responsibility. And, well, my last question, I'm sorry for just such a list.
Don't switch it off. Just leave it on.
Yeah, okay. It is the issue of sustainability. To what extent, in your concept already now, you put the criterion of sustainability warranties of prospective node offerings?
Yeah, a very good question, Marek. This is one of the issues in the dialogues and in the discussion. We have said that the initial offering has to be minimally until 27, preferably for minimally 5 years. And that will also be in the future as long as possible. But the question is, of course, suppose you are a research project and you can offer certain resources for a certain moment, let's say for 1 or 2 years. Is then an EOSC node that is willing to accept those allowed to do so? I would say yes. The EOSC node keeps on going for a longer time, but the commitment of the node should be in the future for a minimum of something like 5 years in order to have a certain sustainability. You cannot demand that everything exists forever. Nothing exists forever. But yeah, a certain minimum period will be in the future a requirement for an EOSC node. For resources onboarding on a node, that can be a shorter period, of course.
Thank you very much. Well, I am leaving a last chance to the
Are there any questions
well,
online?
No. But I have a question about. At first, I had the impression that it's kind of meant of a. Sorry for simplifying things. A search mechanism for data, for services, and resources. But now it seems it's also meant as a gateway for accessing these resources. So the case of a SERV actually providing third-party services as their own to the community.
Yeah.
So is my impression right, or am I missing something?
No, your impression is right, but it's not there yet. So we have quite some way to go. But since we do not have the nodes yet, there's nothing to search. The only search engine that is on the EOSC node is a search engine for the 127 million items they have through the graph, etc. That is even not working properly yet. They are working on that. It's understandable. But an important aspect of the Federation will be a correct search engine to find data and to find services. So yeah, this is definitely going to be part of it. And then it searches through the whole of the Federation. And well, I'm not sure how the search on data will work in the future, but I'm sure like Google and others will also come up with search possibilities for data in the web of fair data.
So thank you very much for the interesting.
Yeah, it's on. Just speak a little louder.
Just a question as being representative of candidate node. I
Yeah.
would like to also mention or ask. So one thing is obviously the interoperability and onboarding, but the second thing, what is very interesting, that the nodes, the first group will be also kind of train the trainer, so they will also be involved in engaging the other nodes and. So am I right? And if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, yeah. It's not explicitly stated yet what it means, but in the dialogue, we have said we will also discuss with the potential candidate nodes that must lead to 7 to 10 candidate nodes, whether they have the willingness and ability to help others. Not necessarily, I think, but I'm now running ahead. We haven't had those dialogues yet. that if you're not able to do that, that you're out. That it doesn't mean, but it's one of the ways to stimulate this development and to get the help from others in. So the more powerful the EOSC nodes are to also accommodate other resources and to help others to become a node, the better it is to build this federation.
Well, you see, so far so good. The situation is almost ideal.
While we're in the very beginning,
well,
then the situation is always ideal.
Wait. But in a sense, your whole presentation sounded as if the EOSC federation concept were a sort of open structure, in the sense of lacking a kind of monitoring, feedback, controlling functionalities. Do you envision also future functions of this sort to provide that the real quality of services and the whole standards will be maintained?
The short answer is yes. Absolutely, and essential, yeah.
So, I don't see any further questions. We shall delegate the questions that have been submitted online to you directly, giving you an opportunity to react. But for now, I would like to express our heartful gratitude, Karel, for dedicating your time, despite of having today, this morning, a long General Assembly obligation at EOSC Association. So, Karel, once more, thank you very, very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and I enjoy having the discussion and the debate, so thank you for being here.